Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is breakdown, breakthrough. And we get to look at how in any breakdown, there are latent seeds of potential, of breakthrough. And those seeds exist merely by virtue of the disruption to existing patterns that then challenge us to find new pathways, new patterns, new ways of thinking and being. So before we get started, we're going to just take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Rub your hands vigorously against each other. Feel the friction, the temperature, all those sensations. And when you stop, feel the tickling and the tingling of all that energy moving. And allow those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. Good morning, Susan. So wonderful to have you guys here with us this morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So today we're talking about breakdown and breakthrough, and how they kind of can go hand in hand pretty readily. So oftentimes, we get stuck in the energy of a breakdown where things don't go the way we want them. It's wonderful to have you here, Susan. Welcome. Um, Susan says, wonderful to be here. So we often get caught in the energy of breakdown and feel like something is a tragedy, or we get caught in the spiral of darkness sometimes. And if we can give ourselves the grace to remember that in the experiences of our lives, if life is, and this is what I choose to believe, if life is happening for us and through us rather than to us, then what appears as a breakdown is also something that is there for our ultimate well-being, our ultimate evolution, perhaps. So if that's the case, if we can remember, even in the face of breakdown, that there's something more available to us, then we can perhaps experience that breakdown in a different way. And I'm not talking, it occurred to me that I'm not encouraging spiritual bypassing. And what I mean by spiritual bypassing is not experiencing the experience through a mechanism of saying things such as, well, it's all for my own good, and therefore I'm not going to feel the pain, I'm not going to feel the hurt, I'm not going to feel the sorrow, the grief, the anger, the reaction. That's not what it's about. It's about recognizing that in those experiences, if that's what's there, we feel the experience, we experience the experience, and the experience and the experiencing of the experience is part of the gift, not that we get to deny it or bypass it or mitigate it, but that we get to recognize it and recognize the dynamics of it and internalize those the lessons that are available. Good morning, Bernadette. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. We're talking about breakdown and breakthrough and how in every breakdown are seeds of breakthrough. So what are we calling breakdown? Breakdown would be when I find myself in an maybe the easiest kind of breakdown is finding myself in an emotional state that for whatever reason I've deemed undesirable. So let's say I get really angry about a situation. So on one level, Susan's saying, hi, everyone. Good morning, everyone. On one level, let's say I get really angry. So I'm aware of my anger and I'm feeling really angry and I have whatever stories are going on around that anger, but I'm most likely not even conscious and aware of what those stories are. I'm just really feeling really angry and I haven't necessarily dug in to look at, well, what's going on under there? And so, good morning, Tammy. So good to have you joining us. Welcome. So Rosalind says, breaking down, and I love this, in parentheses, she's put unlearning, which is perfect, breaking down to become aware of conditional patterns and build a new foundation. That's exactly what we're talking about, Rosalind. Thank you for that. Rosalind says, I get attached to the routine of coffee, but when I can't, I know I'll still survive. So that's funny. The routine of coffee and then breaking that routine to maybe recognize what's underlying that pattern. You know, maybe the coffee is more than probably just the caffeine. The coffee is the comfort of a ritual, the comfort of certain predictability, of continuity, of just, it might serve as an anchoring tool, you know, or an orienting tool to get your day started, to signal the beginning of your day. There are all different levels that coffee might be an important ritual for you. And also to recognize that maybe it's not something that you have to do every day, like the world won't fall apart if you don't. But it's kind of great to have the contrast between that continuity of a ritual, which can become, over time, it can become automatic and unconscious, and then we're not really present to it. So breaking that pattern can bring us back to an awareness of what that pattern provides for us. You know, it's sort of like making your bed in the morning. There are days when I don't make my bed, and when I do make my bed, it's interesting because there's a different feel to the day. There's a different feel when I walk into the room and the bed is made. And so things that we have cultivated as habits often become robotic, and we're not really present to the value of those rituals. And when we can bring ourselves back to the value of the rituals, then, you know, that's an awesome thing. So Susan says, replying to Rosalind, once a week, changing patterns. Yeah, I mean, that's a really cool thing to do, is to shift your patterns around to recognize the value of the pattern, and also, or lack of value of the pattern, and also to be bringing greater awareness into a moment. Bernadette says the comfort of a beginning, I think relating to coffee. So Jenny, welcome. Jenny says the breakdown is like emotional growth and it can hurt until the breakthrough. And one of the things, Susan says once a week coffee. There you go. Then that's an interesting ritual too, because it's not it's not so routine that it's unconscious. But going back to what Jenny was saying, emotional growth, it can hurt until the breakthrough. So let's go back to the situation where I'm angry about something and I'm going on and on about this and that and what, they this and it shouldn't be that way and whatever it is. And then if I give myself the opportunity to look underneath that reaction, that breakdown, if I get to look at what is going on that got me so angry or that I got so angry about, that's when I can find the space. That's when I can find the seeds of the breakthrough, because there's more information. So transforming breakdown to breakthrough, the best tool for that is curiosity. Because rather than judging, first of all, being angry, then being stuck in the anger, then when I recognize, oh my gosh, I'm really angry, then I might tend to beat myself up for being really angry instead of approaching it with curiosity to say, what's going on with me being really angry? What got triggered? What are the stories that I'm telling myself? And then I can bring myself more present to whatever my process is that ripped me into that state of anger and upset. So Susan says to be present, change sometimes, no coffee. You guys are really up on this coffee thing, huh? Like, I guess coffee's a big deal. So I have to confess that I've never been a real routine coffee drinker. So at one point I just cut out coffee because I drank coffee once at a friend's, and honestly, my body just wigged. It was worse than any drug reaction I've ever had. Like I was just so wired. I wanted to climb off the walls. I felt like I was out of my body. It was just a really uncomfortable experience. So I rarely have coffee anymore because of how it impacted me. But I do drink, I was cultivating a routine of cinnamon tea daily from oh, I forget the name of the company, but boy oh boy, yum yum. And it was such a gift. I finally ran out of the tea. I just reordered it. So right now I'm in between and I'm recognizing how much I enjoyed that ritual. So Susan says, living with my mom, negative, and does the opposite of what I say. Well, that's really interesting and tremendously frustrating, I imagine, Susan, for sure. Susan saying decaf coffee. Yes. So if you really, really love the taste of coffee, then decaf might be the thing. But decaf coffee has some caffeine in it too, by the way. So Jenny says, having my heart broken makes me angry. I hear you, Jenny. The thing to look at is underneath the anger, like what's going on about the anger. Probably there's assigning blame to people for doing certain things, and that have resulted in certain feelings for you, like withdrawing their presence, withdrawing their love and support. And I can understand where that makes you angry. And underneath that, there are other feelings that are, there's probably feelings of abandonment and feelings of rejection. And my guess is that those feelings, I'm just extrapolating here. So that my guess is that the feelings of abandonment and rejection are not unique to that particular situation. I know that for me in my life, I had long-standing patterns of abandonment and rejection. And so that's what would arise for me in a number of different circumstances. And what I recognized on some level is that there, for me, and I'm not saying this is so for you, but it's up, you can check it out, but that there was an underlying experience of being unworthy, being not good enough, being somehow defective. That's what was up for me. And when we recognize those things, then we can start to heal ourselves. And it may not change the outward circumstances, but it will change the way that we relate to them. So let's see, lots of comments here. So Susan says, you feel you need that to get energy, coffee. So coffee, yeah, this whole idea of getting energy from coffee, we become dependent upon it, and then our energy depends upon the caffeine too. So, it's one of those devolving cycles, I think. And it might be psychological energy too at some point, that it's like Pavlov's dogs, or with the dogs being trained to know that when there's a bell, they get food. And then eventually when the bell rang, they would salivate because they were ready for the food. So, that ritual may be an energy ritual too. So, Susan says, I say, I am worthy, I matter, honored to be here. Yes, indeed, indeed. So saying these things to ourselves, enabling ourselves to actually presence ourselves to being worthy, to allow, and recognizing that our worthiness doesn't depend on anything outside at all. That it's not up to anything outside of me to dictate whether I'm worthy or not. That's an inside job, is to recognize I'm worthy just by virtue of my being. And Jenny says, and neglect. So I get neglect is something that we also interpret. And Susan says, yes, abandonment. And Jenny says, emotionally abused. Yes. So when we feel beat up, and it's not to say that we don't get beat up. I want to, this is such a weird little nuance, but it's such a big deal. There's the experience of abuse. I mean, there is the abuse that could be objectively defined as abuse. And then there's the experience of being abused. And the thing is, yes, so Jenny's saying also, the feeling I don't matter much, unimportant, excluded, unloved. Yes, Jenny, yes, yes, yes. And Susan says devalued. Yes. So all these feelings, these are internal experiences. Okay, so now here's the distinction. This is not the easiest distinction to make. It's the same distinction that we can make between somebody who is abusing, creating a victim, right? And feeling victimized. Okay, so somebody could be emotionally abusive, somebody could be physically abusive, And our feelings around feeling unimportant, feeling excluded, feeling unloved. Jenny, you got it. Jenny says repeated emotional cycles. Exactly. So part of my story, my personal story for many, many years is that I was excluded, is that I didn't belong. That I lacked a feeling of belonging. And so I often felt excluded or rejected or well, unimportant, unloved. And what I recognized, and I'm not asserting that this is necessarily so for you, but I can tell you that it was so for me, is that I was not loving myself. I was not accepting myself. I felt within myself, I felt not worthy of love. I felt defective. Good morning, good morning. Hello, Gia. Welcome, welcome. So good to have you here with us. We're talking about breakdown and breakthrough, and how when we recognize the patterns of the breakdown, so feeling unloved, excluded, unimportant, that I don't matter, those are lenses through which I used to experience the world, as not enough, as defective, as unworthy, and unvalued. And so I had those feelings about myself. And so when I would see that coming from the world outside of me as well, I would see the behaviors that people had as relating to me and dismissive of me. Or so Susan says, not me. I don't agree to be treated this way. So that's a really good, important step, Susan, for 100%, is to recognize I don't agree to treat myself that way. And so I'm not saying that people aren't dismissive or excluding or rejecting. I'm not saying that they're not, but I'm saying that there's a big difference between that behavior and feeling those feelings. And the reason being, so I can't tell you how many times with clients I have gone through sessions with them where they have felt unimportant, unloved, excluded, rejected. And then as they connect more deeply within themselves, they can recognize that that other person's behavior wasn't as much about them as it was about the other person and what was going on with the other person. And that behavior was their interpretation. So for instance, I think I talked about this just the other day, a client who felt completely unsupported by their family and felt unimportant and dismissed and neglected. And when they went through this session, they recognized, you know what, those people were trying to do their own lives. They were handling whatever they were handling. They were going through whatever they were going through. They were trying to preserve themselves in whatever way they could preserve themselves. And it wasn't about me. And it's so true that that so much of other people's behaviors, we could say all of other people's behavior, even if they make it about us, is about them, just like our behavior is about us. So it's about the way they've perceived things. It's about the stories they've created that are creating the way that they're behaving. So Jenny says, being abused makes you vulnerable to be a people pleaser and attract people who repeat the abused you without you consciously realizing. Jenny, that's super insightful and true. Bernadette says, those emotions are very common amongst the adopted community as well. So I want to address both of you. Jenny, I read yours first, so let's talk about this. Yes, being emotionally abused as a kid, we become patterned into those experiences, right? We don't consciously realize it. And because we're patterned, we're putting out the signals that are attracting the people that recognize those signals that create this ongoing dynamic. And so it's when we can start recognizing what is the internal dynamic that is going on for us outside of you're abusing me, what's going on inside, what's going on about being in our beingness, being a victim, feeling victimized. You know, what's going on for us about feeling and identifying with being unworthy. And when we are able to start addressing those things, that we're shifting the dynamics of the pattern so that we're no longer attracting those people. Those are the people that I attracted for years and years and years. So I totally get it. So I'm not talking out of something hypothetical. This is what my experience actually was. And saying that these experiences are common among people who are adopted, understandably, right? Because they have the original story of I wasn't good enough, so I was given away. Understandably. But maybe it's that they were put up for adoption because the parent wanted something better for them than they could provide. You know, like there's so many perspectives on circumstance. There's so many different ways to interpret different experiences. Bernadette says, being an abused child, I vowed to never be victim to what gave them the right to control me. Many years of therapy. Bernadette, I relate. I get it. I mean, I was a very sensitive child. I experienced what I would call, you know, emotional abuse. I called it that. I experienced it that way. And I got patterned into all kinds of things. And it's taken many, many years to move beyond that. And to recognize, you know, people do what they do they're doing the best they can do. It may not be great, but they're coming from their circumstances as well. Gia, I might have a minute to read this. I'm going to ask you guys no more comments because I got to go. Gia says, I have to see Mira. It's when I don't love myself, accept myself, when I reject myself, I see others doing the same with me. It's actually the projection of my own self-talk. Gia, this is brilliant. Totally, totally true. They are just here to let me know that I need to do some inner work. And after that, outside validation hardly matters. It affects, but as we go back in, it empowers us and prepares us to the next level. I realize now that I don't have anything to prove to anyone, and it's liberating after lifetime traumatic experiences. Exactly, 100% true. Brilliantly said. Susan said, takes away who you are. Bernadette says, so many dynamics around becoming who we want to be as a soul and a person. And Susan says, mirror. Yes. And Jenny says, just in the last few months, I became conscious and aware that my past experiences have evolved into the now. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. What a way to end today's conversation. Really dynamic conversation, folks. Thank you so much for engaging and really being willing to look and think about these things. So until next time, I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. Please check out the other awesome programming. I hope to see you again here really, really soon. And until then, so much love to you.